Let's go ahead and talk about the Sketch interface. The first thing we'll notice is that it's incredibly simple. Sketch designed the interface to be minimal. Let's go ahead and talk about the four aspects that make up our interface. The first, the toolbar, is located along the top and is going to contain the most important actions. Along the right side, we have our inspector, where we can adjust the properties of selected layers. Speaking of layers, along the left side we have our layer list, which is going to consist of all the layers in our document. And then lastly, and most importantly, the majority of the space is taken up by our working canvas, right here in the middle. You'll notice there are no floating panels. Instead, when we select an element, the inspector will adapt to show us all the tools we may need at that very moment for that specific element. They designed it this way so that no matter what we're working on, we always have a completely unobscured view of our canvas. Let's go ahead and talk about Sketch's canvas. We talked about this earlier and we know that it is infinite in its size. We can scroll as far as we want in any direction. So we have the complete freedom on how we set up our drawing area. Now a lot of times we're going to want to set a fixed frame, and we've done this earlier. If you recall, when we needed to specify a specific size for our screen for the Acorn app, we used what's called an artboard. So whenever we're designing for mobile interfaces, or we want to do the exact layout of a website, a lot of the times we're going to use artboards. We also talked about in the last lecture that we can view our canvas in both a resolution independent view, and this is going to give us that infinite precision, and that we can also turn on our pixel preview, where we'll know exactly how every single pixel is going to be rendered if it's being exported to a bitmap format, such as a JPEG or a PNG file. I want you to please consider that some effects, such as the blur effect, are going to force parts of the canvas to be displayed in pixel preview mode. And the reason being, a blur is inherently a pixel-based effect. Now let's go ahead and talk about our inspector along the right side here. The inspector lets us adjust the settings of the current layer we have selected. When you have a layer selected, we're going to see that the inspector is divided into a few different sections. The top section are our general attributes. Now, the general layer styles consist of position, size, opacity, blending, and a few special options depending on our style, like corner radius. Well, currently we don't see those, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to Insert. I'm going to select Rectangle, and I'm just going to drag out a rectangle real quickly so we can see this update. The bottom part of our inspector is going to have our style attributes. Our style attributes consist of fills, borders, shadows, inner shadows, and Gaussian blurs. To add a new fill or a new border, we can simply select the plus icon next to the section title. Now when adding a new fill or border, we're going to get a popover that allows us to choose the color that we want for our element. We can also turn off each fill or border simply by checking the checkbox on the left side. When we have one or more fill or one or more borders, we can actually delete them just by selecting the trash can next to the title where the plus sign was. To change the options for a fill or a border, we have some advanced options when we select the gear icon, and we saw this earlier when we needed to make a dashed line. Let's now move over to the left side of our app, the layer list. Now, the layer list is quite obviously a list of all our layers on the current page and shows us a small preview next to each name. We can see which layers are locked, invisible, has a mask, or may be marked for export. In this list, we can reorder our layers, and we can even choose Boolean operations for subpaths of a shape. We can also group layers or rename them to make sure that we're keeping our document organized. Sketch also supports multiple pages. We can add or remove pages using a little pop-up above the layer list. The layer list always shows the layers of the current page only. Along the top of our Sketch application, we have the toolbar. In Sketch, the toolbar contains everything we need to make our drawings. Now we've used the insert button several times, and we know this is where we're going to go to add new layers, shapes, images, symbols, and more. Next to the insert button, we have the group and the ungroup buttons. We're going to use these, of course, to keep our documents organized. The next few sections cover how we can edit our layers, transform our layers, rotate our layers, and flatten our layers. I want to now move along to the union, subtract, intersect, and difference. These are what are referred to as Boolean operations and are going to play an important role later on in this course when it comes to creating our own icons and our own custom shapes. We can also move layers forward and backwards on our canvas. And lastly, the export button is also our slice tool, where we can export our drawings to one or to multiple bitmap or vector-based files. Now, unlike many other apps, Sketch does not have a toolbox with all the common tools we may use. Instead, we have our toolbar. We can add additional shortcuts and tools to the toolbar simply by right-clicking anywhere on the toolbar and selecting Customize Toolbar.